hydrants we have on site. Does anybody know how many we have? There's several of them. Hydrant site setup, direct and tanker fill, the hookups for hydrants and how we want to do it to make sure that we're ready for the incident no matter what it is. And then we'll touch on nursing operations and add drafting operations in the future. We're actually going to go hands-on with that out in the bay after this. So we may not put a whole lot of time into that during the classroom portion of this. As you can see on the map we have over here, the shaded areas are areas that are rural, and the white areas with the small little dots here, you can see are the hydrants, identifies what's rural water supply and what's urban. And when we say rural, we're basically talking about an area that we will need to shuttle water and nurse the operation or draft from drop tanks. In the urban interface, most of the time, almost all of the time, we'll be able to hook a hydrant and go ahead and have a good solid water supply throughout the operation. In Andover, we're very lucky not to have a lot of dead end hydrants, which would cause us to have an issue with selecting another hydrant up the line from the hydrant that we're using and causing a disturbance in the water supply. So when we talk about the hydrant types, we've got the red hydrant right here. This is the majority of the hydrants that we have here. The east system of the city is approximately 60 psi average, and the west about 50. So if we think 50 to 60 is actually really strong and a great water supply for our incidents. I've seen it as high as 70. We've got the red with the blue cap down below. We will also cover those, and the yellow hydrants. And a lot of people don't know that we actually have those. So we'll talk about those too. The red hydrant, just like the textbook. So it's a good water supply from the water department. They give us an estimate of about 50 to 60 psi average. Very few dead ends, as I mentioned, and a really solid water supply here in Andover, anywhere we have these red hydrants. As noted here, you're going to want to watch your pressure once you open your hydrant, your intake on your truck. So if you're going to bring 60 psi, obviously that's going to boost what you have going to your lines. And you just want to be aware that when you're going to crank that open or hit the switch to bring that additional pressure in, you could feel that at the nozzle. So just kind of be aware of that and watch your intake pressure as well as the pressure you have coming out of your pump. The yellow hydrant, so this hydrant's at Nightingale and Crosstown. If you see what I mentioned was a hint in the background, that's a pump house for a well here in the city. There's several of them. The yellow hydrant means that it's raw, untreated water from the well. And the only time that this hydrant's going to have pressure behind it is when demand from the city itself, sprinklers are going or the water supply is being drawn to a point where the well needs to kick on in this area. Then there'll be pressure to this yellow hydrant. But just like it kicking on because of demand, it won't turn off at any given time. So this yellow hydrant and the other yellow hydrant should not be considered by us for water supply on any incident that we have. Now we get to the Andover blue capped hydrant. Blue capped hydrant you see there is really easily identifiable. Its use is just like any other hydrant until the scene is over. So we're going to hook up to this just like we would any red hydrant and pump water to our scenes and use them just like any other day. The reason that this has a blue cap is because this hydrant will not drain like other hydrants. So as we're using this, the diagram over here of a dry barrel hydrant, I hope you can see this well, is dry right now. Once we crank our stem nut open, we're going to bring water from the bottom and it's going to fill all the way to the top and supply our lines. So that's pushing this stopper down to the bottom. So if you can see right here, you've got these drains. Okay, so once you bring the stopper back up, this barrel is going to drain down into the surrounding soil and essentially leave the dry barrel dry. This precludes the water from sitting in there and turning into chocolate milk, yoo-hoo, sweet tea looking stuff and corroding the components. And it also stops it from freezing and busting the barrel of the hydrant in the winter months. So in the summer, in the winter, it's imperative that we go ahead and dry out that barrel and make sure that it's drained properly. The other thing I want to mention here with hydrants is we talk about opening them all the way up and closing them all the way. So when we're on scene, if we open this thing halfway, what do we have? We've got water pressurized entering into the drains, and we've got water pressurized on the outside of this. So we want to make sure that we're either opened all the way or closed. And you can ask any questions that you might have later on. We show over here is the bag that's on the truck with the tools that are inside, and we're going to watch a video on how this is pumped out in just a second here. So just stand by while we get this going. So we're here in a blue capped hydrant. What that means is this hydrant does not have a drain. So once we shut this hydrant all the way off, the water inside the barrel of the hydrant is not going to drain down into the soil. It doesn't have a drain at all. In the summertime we need to pump it out, and in the wintertime it's crucial that we pump it out immediately so that this doesn't freeze and bust the hydrant. So we're going to show you how to do that. We just ran the hydrant, so now there's water all the way up to the top of this hydrant right now, and it's not going to go anywhere unless we pump it out. On your engine, you have a black bag like this with a line to run into the hydrant and a exit line to pump the water out. This small pump is electric. I got it hooked up to a generator today. On here it says outlet port. So this is where the water is going to come out. I'm going to hook the short line up to that. And I'm going to hook this long black line up to the inlet side of the pump so that I can pump this water out. And all I'm going to do is run this black line all the way to the bottom of this hydrant. So I'll straighten out the hose. That will help us get it in there. Run this all the way down to the bottom, below the frost line, so I can get all this water out of here so I don't cause a problem. If we can't get to this, it's important that we call somebody and let Public Works know right away that it needs to be pumped out. As I start this, it should start pumping the water out. You can see it's pulling the water out of the bottom. The black line was a hard stop once it got to the bottom of the hydrant. Now we just have to wait for this water to come out. As always, once this is done, we're going to pull this black line out, put everything back the way we found it. Check these threads. You can see on this one here, they're pretty rusty. This one is not seating all the way. I want to make sure that this hydrant's in good working order, so I'm going to let someone know so that we can get a hold of the Public Works Department and they can come out and maintain this hydrant. See just how long this takes. Shouldn't take but another 30 seconds or so, and then we can shut everything down, make sure the pump is dry, the lines are drained out, everything's back in the bag, back on the truck, and the hydrant's put away the way that it should be. And that's about it. All right, and as we mentioned, the drain plug is the drains are plugged, and that's basically the blue cap is due to the elevation of the hydrant inside the city. So it's eliminating the potential for the cross-contamination of groundwater outside in the soil from seeping back into the hydrant and getting into the municipal water supply, because what we're pulling out of the hydrant is drinking water that's coming out of the faucet at your homes. Equipment and setup. The hydrant bag on the truck should contain the following things. We've got the large diameter hose adapter that's going to screw on to the large opening on the hydrant and connect to the LDH. This could be a gate valve on some trucks. I know on engine 31 there's a large gate in there that's similar to this with the gate that's going to come down so you can turn it on and off. 2.5-inch gate valve for the side port on the hydrant, the 2.5-inch. A hydrant wrench, of course, and then a set of Storz spanner wrenches. So these combination wrenches, we should always remember to bring with us anytime we're going over to work on the hose. A lot of times we can use our gloved hand and a partner to undo a Storz fitting, but it really stinks when you get over there and you can't undo the fittings and you got to go back to the truck and grab wrenches, which could be a long ways away. So have these wrenches along anytime you're going to work on attaching or removing hoses. And then the mallet. The mallet's always a good thing to have around. Bust ice off, loosen fittings, tighten up the ears on the threaded connections, and then you know, all around kind of solid tool to have with you. The LDH, we're looking at the Milwaukee strap that's on the trucks right here. And what that Milwaukee strap does is allow us to step away from the hydrant once we hook it. It really makes it a one-person operation. If the driver of the rig wants to get out and hook a hydrant, they're just going to loop that strap around the hydrant and drive away. With that, packaging this is really important. If we hook this looped end just to the Storz fitting on the end of the hose, what's going to happen? It's going to pull this entire length of the loop, and once you stop the truck, you're going to have to figure out a way to make up that length to get to the hydrant. So what we looked at was kind of a general rule to make sure you have enough room. Is once you lay this strap back on itself, you can see that we've looped about 5 feet of large diameter there, and once this pulls tight, and you'll see this in the video, you got enough once the truck stops to go ahead and hook that up to the hydrant. All right, we're going to talk about hooking up a hydrant for direct fill to a truck, or for a hydrant fill site for tanker operations. Just briefly, we're going to talk this Milwaukee strap, the yellow strap that's on our trucks on the LDH as it comes out the truck. This is a pretty important piece of equipment. We'll see it hooked up in a minute. But as you can see, we've got this hose, LDH, doubled back on itself. And what that does is leave us enough room once the truck lays into the scene to allow us to still hook the hydrant effectively. If this was hooked only to the Storz end, you can see we'd be about 6 feet away. A good rule of thumb on this is about the length of that strap will give you plenty of room to hook up your hydrant. So Firefighter Rawlings here is going to just show you as he pulls this off. He's got his tool bag over here, how he hooks up the hydrant and sets it up for a fill. This strap is put in place so that this can be unmanned as the truck moves forward. As you can see right now, the truck can pull away without us wrapping the hydrant and worrying about that coupling swinging wide after the truck begins moving. So he's got his bag here. We saw in the picture exactly what was inside that bag. So loosening up this 2.5-inch fitting on the hydrant, he's gonna go ahead and open this thing up and flush it to the side. You can see how he's positioned that flag kind of below his legs there to allow him to swing the wrench. I'm gonna open this up, flush it out with nice clean Andover water, close it up. He's gonna put the remaining fittings on the hydrant. So the 2.5-inch gate valve we throw on there so that we don't have to shut down hydrant operations if we've got a direct hydrant to the LDH, to the truck, and we want to hook up an additional line. We can always hook up a 2.5-inch on there. It's gated off, whereas we would have to shut down the hydrant entirely to pull one of those caps off and place another line on there. So in some of the bags, you're going to find a large gate valve on the front of this. That doesn't preclude us from putting that 2.5-inch gate on one of the side openings. So you saw him with the mallet pound that down a little bit just to get it tightened up. He's loosening up the strap, and now you see how critical it is to have that extra length of line on the LDH to hook up to the hydrant itself. Now that was able to go on with his hands. Inside the bag, you're also going to see the 2 Storz wrenches. Those are a critical component of this bag. Anytime you're going to use Storz fittings, you really want to have these 2 wrenches with you. 2 of them. It's sometimes they open with your bare hands, but when you get there and they don't, you're going to want those wrenches, and that's a pain in the butt to get back and get wrenches when you're trying to get the job done. Now that he's got the hydrant hooked up, he's got all of the appropriate fittings on there. He would normally go ahead and when they call for water, just open that hydrant right up, and we've got a fill right to the truck. I guess I don't really have anything else to add to that. All right. So on the nursing operation side, there's some considerations that you're going to have is what you see on arrival. What do you have and where is it going? Is nursing your scene going to be enough? On a lot of the scenes that we have, it's a fair amount of fire is going to be dealt with quickly by a nursing operation where we're going to swap trucks out continually. Apparatus placement is very important. If we can keep things out of the way, make sure we do leave or make considerations for a drop tank for the incident to grow. That's always prudent. Making sure that you leave room for aerial apparatus, other pieces of apparatus that may need to come into the scene, and then you can make that decision to nurse or draft based on those items. The equipment that we have is the main one is this Siamese that you're seeing here. So we've got arrows on ours that you'll see in the video, and water goes in one side or the other and closes off the other and goes to the truck this way. That's different from a gated Y. You see here the 2.5-inch male to Storz and the 2.5-inch female to Storz. No matter what you have here, depending on what piece of which end of the hose you're going to arrive at that Siamese, what do you have to fix it? You've got fittings, so adapters that can go either way on those, female, or male to male, whatever you need to get your hose attached, so keep that in mind. And then keep your hose lines and other items out of the way, and like I said, plan for the future. The scene could get bigger, or you may not see something at this point. You want to make sure that everything that you're cementing into the scene is going to give you an opportunity to move freely later on. All right, so we're going to talk about our nursing operation now. So this is what's called a Siamese. We've seen the Y many times before. The Y is a piece of apparatus or a tool that's going to go from 1 to 2, and this Siamese is going to go from 2 to 1. So what this is used for is pumping water into this fitting to run out to the truck. So you can see the arrows on here. That's so that we can remember on where we're hooking this truck up, or how we're hooking this piece of equipment up. Along with that, we've got a couple of fittings here. So you can see that this is a Storz to a female 2.5 and a male 2.5 on this one. So if we're going to hook up a 2.5-inch from our tanker to this truck, it's likely that it's going to be a male end on it. So we're going to put this on here. We'll be able to pump a 2.5-inch line into this until we get our water supply established, or we may do that for the entire scene depending on the size. This one's a male, right? So if we hook the female up to our tanker and we come over here, we're going to be male to male. So this is just going to stay on here, and that's what fittings are for. Okay, so we've always got a fitting. There's no need to panic. Inside of this Siamese, hoping you'll be able to see this down here. Can you see in there? You've got a flapper valve that when you push water on this side of this device, it's going to close this clapper on this side. So you're pushing the water through, and the pressure inside the line is going to close this one off. All right, so this provides for an uninterrupted water supply when you bring a second tanker in. So once your second tanker comes in and pushes water against this flap in here, this clapper valve, and it overtakes the pressure of this one, it will close this clapper valve and open this one with an uninterrupted water supply to the truck, to the attack engine or the relay engine, whatever it may be. So if we're going to hook this up when we get to the scene, we're going to pull this off. We may lay this entire system into the scene. We may pull the truck in and pull line off of the truck to the back of the truck. But ultimately we're going to need this piece of large diameter hose to an intake on this engine that we're going to nurse to. We'll make sure we're on an intake and not a discharge, right? That doesn't work very well. So we've got our arrows going to the place we want the water to come from. All right, so we're going to use this as an attack engine. So we're going to hook this puppy up right here. And truck placement is really crucial on this, so you want to keep hoses out of the way. We may at some point determine that the scene is going to get big enough that we want to run drop tanks. And this is a system that could buy us the time to put up the drop tank and drafting setup effectively. So I'm going to pull this off to the side. And I'm going to hook up this female. My tanker is arriving. So lock that on there. When the tanker arrives, it's got a section of 2.5 on it. So we've got a full tanker. And we're going to run this up from the tanker to the siding. So this is going to lay off to the side, and that tanker truck is going to pump its water into the engine and feed it until the next tanker arrives and can pull some more 2.5 inch off of any pre-connect or hose bed and run another one over to this side. Now you can keep running these time after time and just keep cycling through tankers, or if you got a bigger scene, you may want to set up the drop tanks and begin a drafting operation for long-term scenes. All right, and that's it.